Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Ancient Warfare Answers with me, Murray, your weekly fix of ancient warfare-related stuff. Answering questions, hopefully, sent in by you, the listener, viewer, Patreon / interested person who's just come across us on their algorithm. I've got a couple of questions today. Well, I'll do one at a time. But, of course, you can ask us a question and you can back us on Patreon. Just go to Patreon / Ancient Warfare Podcast. You can back us at the level of Optio, Legionary, well, in order, Legionary, Optio, or Centurion, and even get a copy of the magazine digitally with Optio or in print with Centurion. And, of course, you can ask us a question in the comments on YouTube, send us an email. One of the questions that I'll be looking at today said they would have sent a telegram if they could. Oh, glorious. Anyway, first, the question is from Chris. My question: more Roman soldiers were killed in civil wars against other Roman soldiers than any other adversary. Why was it so easy for usurpers to convince their soldiers to fight against their brethren? And why didn't emperors try to change whatever facilitated this kind of behavior? Right. So, firstly, all sorts of issues and lots of history to get through in 10 minutes. Gosh, we'll see how we go. The first thing is, I think that the idea of fighting against brethren alters in the history of the Roman Empire, that there's probably a parochialism and a area-specific loyalty that comes about through legions being centered in particular places, whether it be legionary camps or even provinces, that they become attached to those. And so when local loyalties are appealed to, those legions are willing to rebel because they don't identify with other areas of the Roman Empire. They whether it be the fact that a legion has a community and therefore that community is the thing that matters most, or the wider community of where they live in their camp or their province matters more than the wider, larger Roman Empire, are probably all factors that come into it. But the thing that you need to do, of course, is go all the way back to the Gracchi and then probably Marius. Although these days it's not trendy to credit the Marian reforms to actually Marius. It's an ongoing development, but certainly around the time of Marius, shall we say, that is the late 2nd century BC, the loyalty of Roman veterans is essentially purchased by commanders, not the state, because it is the commanders who are responsible for settling veterans and giving them basically a payout when they finish their service. And so that alters the loyalty of the Roman legions, which hitherto had been to the state. And so now they become loyal to their general. And so when you get the civil wars of Marius and Sulla, when they call on the legions to march on Rome, rather than it being an aberration and something that they're unwilling to do, they see it as an opportunity to plunder because their loyalty is to their general. That creates an environment which then leads to the second set of civil wars, famously between Julius Caesar and Pompey, which again is about personal loyalty to Julius Caesar when he crosses the River Po. And so that idea of, loyal to me, and Pompey places himself as representing the state, but still the troops are loyal to him. And then, of course, you get another set of civil wars after Julius Caesar is assassinated, between the assassins and the heirs. And then another set of civil wars between Octavian and Antony, leading to the sort of the culminative battle in Egypt in 30 BC. So in all of those, you've got the issue that the troops in general are loyal to the general themselves rather than the state they represent. And so they see an opportunity from their commander rather than the state. And the next issue beyond that is the fact that you've got an issue where the troops are loyal to the individual. How do you combat that? What you get with Augustus, of course, is a sort of a rationalization of the legions, reduces the number of legions by about half. We think from 50-something down to 28. And at various points in time in the Roman Empire, you're dealing with 28. It goes up to 30 under Trajan, 30 legions. And so at the various points of civil wars in the Roman Empire, what you have, therefore, is a commander appealing to the troops that they command that they can offer a better deal for those troops. So Augustus is remarkably successful in tying the 28 legions he consolidates to him, that they swear loyalty to the emperor rather than to the empire. So they are personally loyal. So every time there's a usurper and every time there's a civil war, it is indeed an issue that the legions have abandoned that loyalty. And so the next issue is when there is such a rebellion, you've got the issue that those troops say, we've got such a bad situation going on. The Batavian revolt's one of those where they're mistreated. We're told that they are given an extremely harsh recruitment process, and they are hard done by. And Julius Civilis says, right, well, I'll rescue you from this situation. And that happens at various points in time, all the way down to Justinian I, when you're reading about the revolt in North Africa of the legions and then the revolt in Italy. It's all about pay and conditions and how they're not treated well, and that the commander they choose to lead them will give them better conditions. Generally, they're going to seize those better conditions. So then when you start to look at other usurpers, whether it be the Year of the Four Emperors, for instance, with a new candidate being declared, normally by armies that the legions in their command declare for them because they see them as being a better option. And then you have, Galba, Vitellius, Otho, and then finally Vespasian, all of those sort of, legions declaring for them and them fighting it out. And, the winner takes it all. But then later, and again, our history is interesting here because when we come to the Flavians, it's Domitian who seems to do the most to reassure the legions of their loyalty to him personally, because he gives them a pay rise, and that's the first pay rise in ages. And then the next one to give a pay rise is Septimius Severus after another series of civil wars. So, the Roman legions under Trajan and Hadrian and Marcus Aurelius are being paid the same. There's not that sort of lack of conditions. But there are still usurpers, even against good emperors. So the other thing, of course, that happens is a lot of these rebellions and usurpations occur when an emperor dies, or when an emperor is sick, or when there's a false rumor of an emperor dying. So they're turbulent times. Who's going to lead us out of the darkness? Our commander will. So, for instance, the usurpation of Avidius Cassius under Marcus Aurelius begins on a false rumor that Marcus Aurelius has died. And of course, when they succeed, when Marcus Aurelius comes to the throne along with his brother Lucius Verus, there's a whole bunch of rebellions throughout the empire because Antoninus Pius dies. Similarly, when Lucius Verus dies, it looks like there's some advantage taken of that. And Marcus Aurelius, the most philosophical of Roman emperors, spends the rest of his reign fighting wars. And then when you look at the sort of the snowballing effect of all these different rebellions, they're generally along those lines. And when you get into the 3rd century, like the breakaway empires in Gaul and in Britain and Palmyra, what you've got is commanders in the local area thinking or stating outright that they can provide a better set of stability in an unstable world than the emperor at Rome can. And very often, like the ones in Gaul and Britain and even Palmyra, they represent themselves as representing Rome, not opposing Rome. Rome has a different attitude. The British breakaway emperors put out coinage with them and the Roman emperors together, ruling together. So that's true of later 3rd and 4th and even 5th century usurpers too. So they are saying we can do better. We can provide you the security that's obviously lacking from the centralized Roman government, especially when that centralized Roman government is weak or seen to be weak. And there are attempts to mitigate that situation from Rome, that they offer, donatives, they offer pay, but obviously it's going to become very, very expensive. And so generally they surround themselves with a bodyguard, and, the Praetorians choosing emperors, Claudius and others, is something that happens very late. And of course, if you've seen Gladiator, the fictional end of Gladiator, where the Praetorian Guard is selling off the empire. So I think the issue is with all of those civil wars, what you've got is it's not so much that they're fighting their brethren. Their brethren are their fellow legionaries. And so they fight with their brethren rather than against their brethren. So they're not necessarily seeing other Roman legions as their brothers. They're seeing other Roman legions as other Roman legions, and not from Britain. I mean, when you look at Britain, the 3 Roman legions in Britain for most of its history act as one, and Britain has more usurpers than almost anywhere else. And of course, it's far away from Rome. And so a local saying I can do better than a faraway Roman emperor makes a lot of sense in that regard, even though it might be mistaken. And there are attempts by emperors, and generally the most successful attempts, not always, but when you look at the emperors who reassert control, Diocletian, for instance, they do so through putting the army to use. So they wage wars. Even Augustus, the Pax Augusta, is every year of Augustus's 45-year reign, there's a war somewhere. So he's using his legions to do what they're for, and they're not left idle. And Antoninus Pius, for instance, they're left idle, and so they decline, and they're seen as weak, and breakaways happen, or they're attacked over the Rhine, over the Danube. And so there's that. The other thing, of course, is success. If you are successful, you won't have your legions breaking away from you if you're a successful commander or a successful emperor with successful generals. So all of those things tend to fix it. Domitian, for instance, we're told is unsuccessful, his Dacian War, but the soldiers don't seem to think so. They seem to think he was successful. So I think, Tacitus and other sources have misrepresented that. And he gives them a pay rise. So now you can't perpetually give pay rises, and the Roman emperors realize this. So the pay, and there's other things about when Marcus Aurelius is raising new troops for the wars against the Germanic tribes, rather than raise taxes, which is an option, he sells off items of gold and furniture from the royal household to raise the funds to pay for 2 new legions, 1 and 2 Italica. So all of that is why there are so many civil wars and usurpations, and it's a perpetual problem that Rome doesn't ever really succeed in dealing with all the way until it falls. So hopefully, Chris, that's answered your question. Lots and lots of things to digest in that one. We'll see you again for another episode of Ancient Warfare Answers. Thanks very much.